The Kashmiri exodus happened on the 19th of January in 1990. The tragedy is remembered throughout the state because of how it forced many to go from living comfortably to becoming a refugee. The Valley of Kashmir is a beautiful place, which was filled with violence at the time. In the late 80s, there was about a 94% population of Muslims and a 5% of Hindus, which, unlike the rest of India, shows Hindus as a minority. At the same time, there was a shift of a sort towards a more conservative Islam, inspired by political vendetta concerning Pakistan and India. Obviously, Kashmiri Hindus objected and voiced their opinions, which many of their families didn't like very much. Slowly to take Kashmir, Islamic militants started killing and torturing Hindus, so they would be pressured to leave. On the night of the 19th, Hindus no longer felt safe, and a large majority of them left after over 200 people were killed. A young boy at the time, Pratik was growing up in a predominantly Muslim school in his high school. He noticed how people were trying to take Kashmir.
So what they did was they actually wanted Kashmiri Pandits to leave Kashmir. And the way they achieved this was that they started killing the leaders of Kashmiri Pandit community, the judges, the intelligentsia, the doctors, and people who pretty much were flag bearers of the community. They started killing them one by one. First wave of ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Pandits from Kashmir, in which the leaders were killed. This was followed by intimidation and rapes and threatening from the militants to Kashmiri Pandits. It included, posting of names of the Kashmiri Pandits in newspapers that were on the hit list and that would be killed. It included posting on Kashmiri Pandit doors that it was a warning to them that they should leave. Right? So they started picking on all the Kashmiri Pandits, and they also executed on that. Director of Doordarshan Latsakol was killed. A Kashmiri Hindu activist by the name of Tikalal Taplu was killed. Lots and lots of Kashmiri Hindus were killed by militants, and that gave rise to a lot of fear in the hearts of Kashmiri Muslims.
In your mind, and from your point of view, being someone who's actually there, what happened after the Hindus no longer felt safe in their homeland of Kashmir?
Finally, due to the fear, Kashmiri Pandits basically, when after the 19th of January, hundreds and thousands of protesters came out on the streets of Kashmir, and there was a complete law and order breakdown in which there were no police on the streets, no one to safeguard, and Kashmiri Pandits felt helpless in the valley where law and order was completely gone, and they felt that if they didn't leave, that they'd all be killed, that there'd be a genocide of Kashmiri Pandits in Kashmir because of the complete breakdown of law and order in Kashmir Valley. After 19th January, in the following 3 months, 90% of the Kashmiri Pandits migrated from there under the cloud of fear, and they just basically took whatever belongings they could. They took a few clothes and some belongings and just either migrated by buses or by cars and came to different parts of India, but out of Kashmir.
This scary incident brought fear into his mind. For weeks in Kashmir, Pratik was scared of so much. The days brought more and more to be scared of. The feelings evoked really stood out to him, especially the fear and the panic. Pratik had seen the conflict begin in many ways, one being in his own school.
Yes, I first felt this divide, the religious divide happening when I was in school. I was contesting for being a captain of a Saturn house, which is the Blue House. And when I stood up, I could hear some Muslim boys saying that nobody should vote for me because I was a Hindu, and a Hindu didn't deserve to be captain of the house. And that was the first time I got exposed to politics. I was in ninth grade that time. and I got exposed to politics and feelings of differentiation between kids. And so that was the start.
This was when Pratik first realized the significance of this issue. But the issue continued to grow into 1989.
And in 11th grade, in 1989, when I was in 11th grade, it was, I was in the school and we were openly debating this issue about Kashmiri struggle, and I voiced my opinion saying that, I don't believe this is the right way to go for Kashmiris, that it was not the right way. And then, I was told after that discussion by certain individuals that, that I should watch out for myself, that people were asking about who I was, and then they didn't like, my voicing an opinion like that, in a way that they were very serious, saying that these are gun-wielding militants and you need to really get away from them.
Pratik, can you please tell us a personal story?
One fine day, my dad wasn't home and there was a knock at the door, and myself, my sister, and my mom were at home. And there was a knock, and somebody came and asked if dad was around.
What did they ask for your dad?
They asked for my dad and said that, is he here? They want to meet him. And they were wielding guns, and I didn't know why they were asking for him until I realized that they were having guns and they were fully covered. And they entered the house and they searched for him and he wasn't there. And then they left. I quickly called my dad and told him not to come home because there were these gun-wielding militants looking for him. It was 9 p.m. in the evening and he wasn't back. Very scary. And, then the next day our gardener came up and said that it's probably a good idea for your granddad, my dad, Dr. Haq, not to come back because there were people looking out for him. And I was pretty sure that if he was home that night, he would have been taken or murdered that night. So that is the night we decided that he wasn't coming home and that it wasn't worth our while to live there because, if you don't live, what's the point? We were too scared. So he didn't come home. He just, from his clinic where he used to see patients, he just went to his friend's house, who was an army officer. And we basically, next couple of days, my mom wound up whatever she could. And we just basically got in a car and we drove out of Kashmir Valley without taking anything, leaving the life-saving. The fear of darkness, the fear of fear when you'd hear a knock on the door, the fear of gunshots, just feelings of being watched, fleeing away, running for life. So I think these kind of feelings kind of just
He often had no friends to express his feelings to because of how his friends were already on the path to militancy. Pratik's friends were mostly Muslim, as he was living in an Islamic state at the time. While he was being impacted negatively with the militants, so were his friends. Their families followed along with the conservative Islam, making them also follow along. And before Pratik knew it, so many of them were converted. His relationships with them, in his mind, were gone after they became militants, because they were in the end fighting against him and his family.
I still remember my friends who had joined militancy discussing with me that they were going to get trained in Pakistan and come back and fight. And for me not being able to say to them anything to them because you couldn't really say anything because they were militants already. And then seeing them suffer and, seeing yourself suffer, houses being burnt and just fleeing in the middle of the night and under the cover of darkness. Specifically, I remember the night of 19th of January. I was huddled up with a friend of mine, our family friends, and you could hear these sounds on the loudspeakers of the mosques, which were just very, very threatening to hear. I remember getting ready, wearing shoes, and being ready to flee or having run out the back door if the house was attacked. and that particular night. And so I remember how fearsome and how difficult those feelings were. These feelings and a complete sense of uh, hopelessness and a complete sense of helplessness about being able to help our own selves um, was what impacted, I think, my confidence in a big way.
Pratik talks about how hopeless he felt about the situation. When you realize these people you call your friends suddenly no longer respect you and want you around and you can't do anything about it, is when you lose faith in many of your friends. When you see these people that you might even call family and they turn on you because of how the rest of the community is working, you lose much faith in them as well. He knew he couldn't do anything about it, even though he so desperately wanted to. This is what made his sense of hopelessness and helplessness. The feeling that he couldn't do anything at all to stop this. And if he would try, he would most likely be killed.
I fundamentally stopped trusting all of them, all in mass, all at the same time. That was the way my mind reacted to it because of the kind of fear that we had. We didn't know who was a militant, who was an extremist, who was not. So we just shut off. I didn't communicate with any of my Muslim friends for a very long time, and it took me a long time to open up those channels of communication.
While Pratik shut down a lot of his relationship with Muslims, it allowed him to bond deeper with family and other Hindus sharing the same experience. He was able to finally express his feelings with other Kashmiri Pandits sharing the same experience.
The exodus of Kashmiri Pandits from the Valley of Kashmir happened very quickly and in very large numbers. And so there was a feeling of that everyone's running away, running out of the valley. So it was not a very. So I didn't take it as something just personally happening to me. I also knew that was happening with my friends of my community, right? So in that way, it brought me closer to my friends who were going through the same experience because we would talk about it. It also helped me overcome and adapt to those kind of tough situations because we would talk and kind of do it together, right? Because we were all fleeing, getting out of it together.
While that was the side of the migration concerning Pratik's Hindu friends and how they helped each other through this difficult time, there was also a large presence of family migrating together for Pratik. His large family all bonded while more unfortunate events unfolded in front of them. These family tragedies created deeper bonds in a way. While they were helping each other, they also tried to help out others in the community who were also suffering this hardship as well.
My grandmother couldn't take it. She flew. She came out of the valley along with us, and she couldn't survive, adapt to the change, and she died within 3 months of us leaving the valley. And that was very tough for all of us, and we knew how that happened. My sister was too young, and my friends were all kind of talking to each other and dealing with it as we were. My dad was helping his brothers. He was a doctor. He was slightly better off than his brothers, so he was helping him. He was participating in free medical camps and trying to do his best for the community. We would be going to these camps and these refugee camps that were set up in Jammu for Kashmiri Pandits and try to help those people to come out of it. So there was a sense of community, which was helping us overcome the sense of doom that we were going through as a community.
Overall, an event so traumatizing is bound to stick in the head of a teenager growing up, as it did for Pratik. While he lived his life quite comfortably before this event, this really opened his eyes to reality and showed him his first glimpse of blood. This break of law and order showed him what humanity can really be like without constraints and what we are capable of doing. It showed him the extent that people will go to complete a task such as this. This is what truly traumatized Pratik at the time and made him remember this tragedy for years to come.
It was a rude awakening for me as a child of 16 years of what real world sometimes offers. I was brought up in a very beautiful place in a very healthy environment, and all of a sudden, it was very traumatic for me, and so it has left a very indelible mark on my memory, and not in a very positive way, but in a way in which you would say, "Oh, this is how the real world is like, and this is the things that you have to overcome." So this event was very traumatic for me, and left and modified my thought process for a lot of years to come.
The fear caused of death was what sped up the situation. Pratik didn't think when doing things. He would just do what he had to do to survive. He followed his parents and he started avoiding Muslims. In a situation like this, the fear drives you to use your instinct and work on your feet. And on the spot, all the Hindus in the valley had to do this to stay alive and to work in the moment, as the future was irrelevant, as there could, in the end, be no future.
We were fighting for our lives. It wasn't like we are evacuating. It was like, can I survive one more day? Will I be able to live one more day? Will I not? How do I keep myself alive? So when you are in that situation, when you're keeping yourself alive every day, when there's so much fear, you can't really think that long term, right? So it was not, what I was thinking. It was just, how do we stay alive for the next few months, days, weeks, if you will.
The young Pratik was in disbelief at the beginning about what had happened in Kashmir. It was unbelievable for him for so long. It took him years to come to terms, but as he did, he took a stance on violence very quickly. He opposed violence immediately because of his personal experiences in the valley. He believed that everyone should be respected regardless of race, religion, and more. He believed that the world should not have these sorts of events. As he grew more mature and grew older, he realized that to fight extremism, you have to use extremism. Basically, to fight someone using an extreme thought process, you need to have an extreme belief in your own core values. Over a period of time, Pratik believed that the event influenced him to become more fundamentalist. He also realized that the only way to protect your own thought process is to fight it. And he learned that in the valley itself while the event was going on. Overall, the Kashmiri exodus was more than a traumatic event. It stands out to all the Kashmiri Hindus in the valley at the time and impacted them in the thought process through the exodus. We could see how Pratik and his family were influenced, and that happened to thousands of other people. If they were not killed in the valley itself, the 200 to 1,000 people killed in the valley will always be remembered, and the exodus remembered in the hearts of many people across India.